It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Daniel Williams. Mr. Williams received his bachelor's degree from Brooklyn College of the City University of New York. He later received his master's degree from the University of Oregon, where he studied with Ansel Adams, among others. Mr. Williams has spent 20 years photographing African Americans as they celebrate their freedom from slavery, and is best known for his documentary work on Emancipation Day celebrations. The Ohio University professor emeritus of photography has captured on film more than 20 Emancipation Day events in 8 states. Mr. Williams has lectured and given shows across the country, and his photographs have been exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of American Arts in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Williams.
First of all, it really is an honor for me to be here and to be a part of this conference. You don't know, I guess you know what it means to me, because I'm sure it means a lot to you. We at Ohio University are, in November, we'll have our 4th annual conference, which is similar to this. So I just want you to know you are not alone. Other communities are doing the same thing. They're exploring their presence, they're exploring their past, and trying to understand how it relates to our future. So we're all digging in and finding out who we are and what we're all about. And that's very good, and especially in this day and age. And again, I'm very pleased to be a part of this. It's right up my alley, so to speak, because I've been trying to spread the word. I've been spreading the word about Emancipation Day celebration for about almost 30 years now. I was trained as an artist, a documentary photographer, and in fact, when I first started teaching at Ohio University back in 1969, I was doing a project on African American farmers, because I would hear so much about how, I just wanted to know the role of farming, how farming has played a significant role in the development of this country. It started out as an agricultural country. And in fact, slaves were selected from different parts of Africa because of their agricultural know-how. Rice growing along the Carolinas, you took slaves from the Dahomey's who raised rice. And you took slaves because of their skills. So to hear, even from the beginning, we had skills. They knew we had skills, and that's how they selected us, because of various aspects of their economy that they wanted to improve on. We did all of the metal work on the farms, did all of the iron work. We did, we did do all of that. So going back to why I'm here, why I'm so thrilled to be here is, so I've been studying the black farmer, and then after I finished a shoot in southern Ohio, the farmer said to me, "Are you coming back next week?" And I said, "Well, I'm done." He says, "Well, we're going to be celebrating Emancipation." And I said, "Well, what is that?" I know of the Emancipation Proclamation. He said, "Well, that's what we're celebrating, our freedom." And I thought back to when I was in the 5th grade. I went to public school in New York, and the teaching faculty in most of the city schools are Jewish, and so they celebrate Passover. So during Passover, the substitute teacher said to me, "Well, we're celebrating our emancipation from Pharaoh. Do you celebrate your emancipation?" And I didn't have a clue. We we observed Emancipation Day in public school after the January 2nd or 3rd. We observed it, but we never really celebrated it. So when this farmer said to me, coming back from Emancipation, I went back the next week, and what I saw just blew my mind. I never finished my project on the Black Farmer. I'll go back to it someday. I've been photographing Emancipation Day celebrations ever since. They're very important to me. So this event here in Southern Ohio, Gallipolis, Ohio, they've been celebrating Emancipation Day since 1863, since the pre-proclamation address in 1862. They've been celebrating it. So they claim to have the longest ongoing celebration of emancipation in the country. Well, every area, I guess, makes that claim. And part of what you're doing, part of what we're doing is to try and make some kind of chronograph as to who is doing what, and at some point it will be compiled, because my sources say one thing, other sources say others, and so at some point it's going to be all sorted out and put in some kind of order that tells what it was really like. So these women here, this is the Emancipation Queen and her court. And these are not 18 and 19-year-old beauties. These are our elder beauties, where age is respected. And that's an African tradition going all the way back. So this is this was done in 1982, I think, 1982. And it's pretty much my trademark photograph with Emancipation Day celebrations. Go to the next one. Here we go. These Emancipation Day celebrations are basically family gatherings, and most of my images have to do with family gatherings. And they're holding, this is like 3 generations here, and the older woman is holding a photograph of her participation in Emancipation Day going back when she was a young girl. So it's very important that we hold on to that history. Again, more family gatherings. This is in the Gallia County Fairgrounds in southeastern Ohio. And this was an important stop on the Underground Railroad because the Ohio River was the borderline. I'm going to sort of go through these. I don't have a particular story with each picture, but I just want you to get the flavor of what I've documented. Here we have a gospel group, because religion plays a very, very important part in these Emancipation Day celebrations. These are events that affirm the family, and we have always had a strong family ties. This documentary project that I do helps to explore the issue of the black family. Of course, when we talk about the breakup of the black family, we're talking about a nuclear family, not the extended family. When we talk about the extended family, then we talk about family. The expression, it takes a village to raise a child, comes from that. Here we have some games, adults and children come together to play. Now, Ohio isn't the only place that celebrates Emancipation Day celebrations. I would go around and take a slide projector to the various states and show them that others are doing the same thing. And they would be very surprised with this information because slavery, we all don't celebrate Emancipation Day on the same day. Slavery was dealt with as a state-by-state issue. So different states, especially in the North, ended slavery during various times. New York ended slavery in 1853. and so on. I don't have the whole list of which state did what and when, but each state dealt with slavery in its own time frame. So there is no one sweeping day in which we celebrate the freedom. So in Gallipolis, we celebrated in September, and so what we did is I showed them these Emancipation Day celebrations in Thomaston, Georgia. So we chartered 2 buses, and we all went down to Thomaston, Georgia during Thomaston's Emancipation Day celebration. This was a break we took just outside of Atlanta. We stopped for a prayer meeting. And during the prayer meeting, we took a group photograph. And so we visited Thomaston, Georgia. Now, this particular Emancipation celebration event, this is what they do in Paducah, Kentucky. They go all out. This is the August 8th homecoming, and it's similar to, it's the same date that you are celebrating here, you're talking about here. And as part of their celebration, of course, it involves a cruise on the Ohio River. And every year they honor a favorite son. And here's a photograph of 2 women on the cruise, on the boat. This particular celebration back in 1983 was honoring Fate Marable, the well-known musician who was said to have given Louis Armstrong his first job. And he's a native son of Paducah, Kentucky, and so they are honoring him with a headstone. And this is his granddaughter reading a statement. And here's a close-up of the headstone. So he's finally getting a headstone. But as part of their tradition, they honor a native son who has gone out into the world and has done well, which is a very important part of their tradition. And of course, religion is the backbone to all of this, because all of these emancipation celebrations are put together and planned by church committees. The church is very, very important in this. And so they play a very important role in organizing, planning, and carrying these events out, because these events, to keep order, to keep it meaningful, to give it a sense of history, it requires a lot of planning. And this represents well, they call it the granddaddy of them all, because it's Juneteenth, Houston, Texas. And this is the largest annual celebration, and they celebrate their Emancipation Day on June 19th. And this is the celebration in Houston, Texas. And it's, slaves were freed from Texas 3 months after the war. General Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox in April, and the war didn't officially end in Texas until June, when General Granger landed at Galveston and actually marched through and freed the slaves. So they call it Juneteenth there. And I saw my first black cowboy. Now, I've been growing up, I grew up with the old Saturday westerns at the movies, and I never saw any black cowboys. But historically, literally 3 out of 5 cowpunchers were black. Exactly. And I could see if they were just 1 in 10, but 3 out of 5. How could Hollywood have neglected us? How could Hollywood have? My first black cowboy was Cleavon Little in Blazing Saddles. So these folks here set me straight. And this is and they have these riding clubs. So these are the circle riders. of Houston, Texas. And so there's a very strong tradition here, along with, and athletic events, of course, are very important. They have a track and field event, an annual track and field event that they do. This is a candlelight ceremony. A couple of years ago, in 2000, the Ohio Historical Society was recognizing Underground Railroad sites throughout the communities in Ohio. And this is recognizing the town of Gallipolis. It's right across the river from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. But of course, before the Civil War, it was all Virginia. West Virginia seceded from Virginia because they didn't want to take part in the war. So had runaway slaves coming right across into Cincinnati, into Gallipolis, Ohio, and many of these places. So this is a dedication of one of these sites in Ohio. So they had a candlelight ceremony on the river. These are the participants holding the candles. And then the next day, at the actual meeting house that sheltered slaves, runaway slaves, we have this dedication ceremony and unveiling. And they had the reenactment of the Emancipation Proclamation reading. So you have someone impersonating Lincoln, and someone impersonating Frederick Douglass, and someone impersonating Harriet Tubman. So it was really a wonderful ceremony. And that's a sampling of the some of the Emancipation Day events, just a few out of many that I went to. And I do have still photographs over in the corner that I'll talk with you about. I have T-shirts and posters, announcements, and everything like that to give you some more information. Now, one of the most serendipitous moments in this whole project was when I went to Ghana in 2002. Now, Ghana, as you know, was one of the departing points for slaves. Ghana and Senegal. Dakar, Senegal, Gorée Island, and you have the Cape Coast Castle in Cape Coast, Ghana. And what did I see? Emancipation Day celebration over there. Now, the Prime Minister of Ghana came to the United States back in 2000 and went to Juneteenth and was so impressed with Emancipation Day celebrations that as a part of bringing African American tourists over to visit some of these castles, they've begun doing a Emancipation Day celebration. So this was their second Emancipation Day. And for you historians in the crowd, W.E.B. Du Bois spent his last years in Ghana. He died at Accra. We visited his tomb, we visited his office, where all of his papers are. So this was actually a commemoration of him and his work, along with the Emancipation Day celebration. So here the diaspora has come full circle. And I was also exhibiting some of my work about Emancipation Day celebrations in the National Museum in Accra. So again, I'm bringing the word about Emancipation Day celebrations over here, over to Africa. And they greeted my work with enthusiasm and interest. And these are the dancing groups, cultural dancing groups that were part of the museum show opening. They had a group of African American artists bringing their work over there, and I was a part of the group, and this was our reception over there. And this is Cape Coast Castle, and they have this pageant play that they do for tourists, which kind of explains the slave trade in summary. So here we have the March of the Kings. And in the background, we have the colonialists stalking them. And here they spot the colonialists. They don't know what they're there for. But of course, they welcome them because we've always trusted them. It's part of our blessing and our downfall, some may say. And here now these are actors who, of course, wear the masks of the colonists. But ironically, there's John F. Kennedy and Mick Jagger and Mr. Bean, the British comedian. But I don't know, maybe they were playing a joke as well. But these are the actors in the play. And I thought that this made a pretty powerful image myself. This is part of the collection. This image is in the Smithsonian Institution. It's part of the collection of my work in the National Museum of American Art. And this, for me, tells the whole story from my experience there. And here we have the gathering of the slaves in a symbolic manner. And here are all of the tourists, myself among them. But I got up out of my seat and sort of mingled with the actors, went behind the stage and got these photographs. And this is sort of an overview of the Cape Castle, Alina Castle courtyard. And this is where we were gathered after we were captured from the countryside. Now, the slave trade, of course, needed the cooperation of a lot of people. That also included tribes of Africans as well. But given the proposition that if you don't find others, we'll take you, they had no choice. And this is a group of, when you go to visit these castle dungeons, of course, the tour guides are very knowledgeable and try to give you a sense of what it was like. And so here, this is a group of artists. We all went as a group, and we're sort of holding hands and meditating in this courtyard where we were gathered. And so you can see the skull and crossbones over some of the entrances to the lower chambers in the dungeons. But this is where we were held until we were shipped to the various colonies that used slave labor. Here's a closer image of that. And it was a very efficient operation because you had this was a fort. You had soldiers living there. The commanders of the fort lived in the upper area. The soldiers lived on the ground level, and of course the slaves were in the lower chambers. And here we go down into some of the dungeons, and these places, these holding chambers, were inhuman in terms of the conditions there. Generally, you were ankle deep in dung and excrement and everything, and the odor was tremendous. And you see these little grooves down there. These little grooves were all pathways where urine and other excrements could be washed away. I've done a whole series on these chambers, and I'm going to do an installation using these chamber walls. And it's a very eerie feeling when you're walking around down in these chambers. It's just hard to believe that people were kept in for so long and then put into the halls of slave ships where the conditions were even worse. And talk about a Holocaust. This was our Holocaust, and very few of us survived. And when you look around the room, all of you, all of us, this is what we survived. This is who we are. This is what we've come through. And we are strong because of that. This is a griot who sits there and accepts your offering. It's a kind of altar. As you can see, the doorways are so small, only one person at a time could fit through it. So there was no sense of, let's charge and try and break out. These dungeons were constructed to prevent any kind of rebellion or escape. Some did manage, but as you can see, as we experienced when we walked through these chamber doors, you can only get through them one at a time. So if you can imagine being packed in this room like sardines and trying to move through them, it's quite an experience. These are some of the air shaft chambers where they would try to ventilate and pour water down to try and wash away some of the human waste. Now, if you tilt your head slightly, this was the door that we walked through as we marched down to the ships. This is called the door of no return. And as a final picture, I thought that the words of Harriet Tubman on the shirt of one of the visitors was very appropriate, called "Keep Going. If you are tired, keep going. If you're scared, keep going. Keep going. If you love freedom, keep going." And it has a lot of relevance for us today. So. Well, my son lives in Nigeria. He is a development consultant. He spent 3 years there, 4 years. He does farm tech work, genetic engineering crops. He does all kinds of things. And he's doing consulting on his own now. He used to work for NGOs. But I'll tell you what, this is how foreign aid works. When we talk about giving money to countries, underdeveloped countries, we don't give them the money. We don't give them the money. We, in essence, give them a credit card. And they have to buy from us. So American companies bid for the contracts from these foreign governments, and they actually do the work. So it's like buying from the company's store. So your money is not given away. And don't be brainwashed by politicians who say, we're wasting your taxpayer money is going to waste. It's not going to waste. It's hiring Americans to do the work. So it's not, the money is not going to Nigeria. The money is not going to Afghanistan. The money is not going to wherever. The money is going to American companies to do the work. So my son decided, well, I'll be my own company. So he did some contracts. Before that, he spent 5 years in Indonesia, installing windmills to create electric power for irrigation and all that stuff. So my kids have, I guess they're children of the world. They travel around the world, they work around the world. They don't live in the States anymore. They've left home since they were 12, 13 years old. They've been very independent. And I used to take my daughter to these Emancipation Day celebrations. She would come kicking and screaming. Why are you taking me? Oh, your children actually listen to you. Believe it or not, they listen. They listen because it comes out in later years. And to this day, she thanks me for all of that experience. And that's why she's teaching African American history now. And so my kids have traveled the world. My son is back in the States now, and he should be arriving in Athens next week sometime, so I can hang out with it a little bit before it goes back over. I see the one, and it gives me a chance to travel too. So I travel and see them and do them. So. Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in the trip you organized for people from Gallipolis.
Gallipolis, Ohio, right.
Down to Thomaston.
Down to Thomaston.
Both
right.
groups say they have the oldest, longest continuous
right.
observation. So I'm
well,
interested
well,
in
that's been
took place down there.
Well, the discussion, Mr. George Carricker, who was the organizer for the celebrations in Thomaston, we all got together and so we settled the issue. It says, well, we have posters that go back to 1863, and of course, when did Sherman march to Georgia? That's because that's when it was settled by looking at history.
Ohio wins.
Ohio won. Again. And the celebration that I went to in Juneteenth in 1982, that was the 12th annual one, because they were disrupted during the Second World War. They stopped. A lot of these celebrations broke down at the turn of the last century. There were the great migrations after World War I and after World War II. Many of us left the South and moved to northern cities. So when we accumulated in the ghettos in the northern cities, there were people from many different places sharing the same 5 or 6 square blocks. So there was no common celebration day among them, so there wasn't any going out in the street and having a festival. People went back to their hometowns to celebrate individually, so there was no concerted effort to do that. Now they do it in Detroit as part of the as a tail off of the celebrations that they have in Windsor, Canada, because the British colony, the United Kingdom, freed its slaves in the 1835 to 1840. Each island was to be freed through some kind of a staggered system. So before the Civil War in the States, Canada, the slaves were freed in Canada. Many of them went to Canada. And so they would have their celebrations in Canada, and you would have these sympathetic separate celebrations in the free states in the north as a way of lobbying for the abolition of slavery in the United States. But many of the Caribbean celebrations are actually emancipation celebrations. The annual Splash Day they have in Jamaica, the Carnival in Trinidad, they're all emancipation day celebrations. Yes?
Dr. Williams, I would like to make 1 or 2 comments and then a question.
Yes.
From my history in my country, I'm from Liberia, West Africa.
Okay.
We were taught in my history that the chiefs from back home, they sold our people for things like salt,
Right.
tobacco, liquor, and so on like that. And also that the concept of slavery in the African context,
Very different.
it was far different from
Very different.
what they expected over years.
Exactly.
And then,
Are you Americo-Liberian or are you?
no, red-blooded Liberian.
Okay, because you were not allowed in the presidential palace until very recently.
Yeah, sure.
Because Liberia, as it was established by the United States, the religious groups in America, the Methodists, and so on, we may think of them as being benevolent in terms of educating Africans. They were educating them to send them back. And that's what Liberia was all about, to send them back. So it wasn't any generous, it wasn't out of any kind of generosity. It was to get rid of them, but let's give them something to go back with.
Yeah.
So many of them did not, like If you look at the dispute between Garvey and Du Bois, Garvey, of course, wanted to go back, establishing the Black Star Lines. But of course, that was sabotaged by the American government, because the colonialists, the European governments who had colonies in Africa, told America that you can't allow this to happen because we don't want any agitations, we don't want any trouble in our colonies. So they sabotaged Marcus Garvey's Black Star Line, and they indicted him for mail fraud.
And you mentioned earlier about Du Bois.
Yes,
The Thomaston Company over here
Yeah.
has a branch in my country.
right.
And the portion of land that they bought from my country, way back then, Du Bois told my government to not even sell it to Thomaston. Because the rubber that makes your tire, majority of that comes from my country.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you know, so he refused for them to sell it, but at that point in time, because the government was in a jam, I think they offered $10 million. And since then, up to now, Thomaston has made more than $100 million over there. You know, but my question would be, if you don't mind, do you know the houses you showed in your picture?
Yeah, the castles?
Yeah.
Castle, yeah.
And especially the last one, the point of no return.
Right.
Do you know whether those were built by the slave traders or?
Oh, they were built by the Dutch.
Okay.
Because the first traders through there were, well, actually they were the Spanish, because back then, Holland was a colony of Spain. Back then, in the 18, where are the historians here? Give me some help.
Portuguese.
Yeah,
16th century.
yeah, back in the 16th century, Holland was a colony of Spain. In fact, much of the bullion from the Incas and the Aztecs was melted down, sent back to Spain, and they invested that money in building Amsterdam. So this beautiful, the city of Amsterdam in Holland was an investment that Spain made in their colony, and they did that with the bullion from South America. But back then, I think it was Pope Leo the 11th divided the world. They said Spain will have this half and Portugal will have that half. And that's why they speak Portugal in Brazil and Spanish everywhere else in the New World. Yes. Oh, you said you had another question.
No, that was it. That was it, sir.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Excuse me. August 8th,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the United States, was used for business in different areas of the United States. For an example, my wife can verify this, we were together in Coletta, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
August 8th was a festival that West Virginia coal mine used to recruit baseball players to come into the area.
Mm-hmm.
And they in turn would sell them to the farm system on the East Coast. Nowadays, it is still being used to raise funds for special groups, specialized groups.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I talked with the historian about that, and he said that was the biggest fundraising date in the history of Coletta, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we get all the faith built back on the main line? How do we get the people involved to bring this back, to let the people know?
Well, part of what we can do and what you're starting to do here is to tell the truth about August 8th so that there's no question about what the day is, and tell it to our children. You know, I honestly think we're being sidetracked by issues because we are trying to invent a cultural connection to keep us together. That's what Kwanzaa is all about. Now, forgive me for saying this, but Kwanzaa has no meaning. Kwanzaa is not a part, Kwanzaa was not born out of trauma. All significant holidays are born out of traumatic events, are born out of struggle. Kwanzaa was an intellectual concept by Ron Karenga, of course, after the Watts riots, but he felt that he needed to create some kind of cultural connection. But he didn't have to look very far. What happened to Emancipation Day? This is what we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should be proud of what we came from. And I mean, nothing, but now you have stamps commemorating Kwanzaa and not Emancipation Day. Because Kwanzaa does not represent a threat. When I say threat, it doesn't, Kwanzaa does not contribute to our knowledge, does not contribute to our history, but Emancipation Day does. So why is there a Kwanzaa stamp and not an Emancipation Day stamp?
That reminded me of something that I don't think really came out in the panel discussion. Mr. Williams, that impressed me so deeply is that when we were talking to people, so many people would say, we didn't celebrate the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
The 4th of July. Now these are people in little country towns, way out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't celebrate the 4th of July. 4th of July was not Freedom and Independence Day for us.
They
we
listened,
celebrated
right.
that
was Frederick Douglass.
And it really took me just a little while to hear what you would have heard immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what a powerful political statement that was. It wasn't just saying we had a party on Friday
No,
instead of
exactly.
Saturday. It was am I hearing that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we're going to celebrate when we celebrate.
Right. It's Emancipation Day, right. Well, we do share the 4th of July, and at some point we will be celebrating it in earnest, but not right now. As Frederick Douglass said that at the 150th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. What are we celebrating? Yes?
I'd like to say something. I think one of the things that is wrong with the American Negro, because I don't use the other that much, is the fact that this is our country. Now, whether anyone wants to accept us or not, this is our country. This is where we were born. Our ancestors may have come from Africa, but they enslaved, and then when the war was over and they were free, then they taught us to live the kind of life that we can live as human beings here in this country. And I think as I have grown up, it's always been a separation. As to the 8th of August was our day. We didn't have any part in it. Any other holiday, it was always belonging to the white man. But we shouldn't feel that way. This is our country. We should fight for it. We need to get back to the point that we believe in God and let Him be our leader, because when I study history, that's where it all came from. If the slaves had not believed in God and the church and her home, we wouldn't be here today. And I think we need to realize that this is our country, no matter if no one wants us at all, but we fight for it.
Yes, this is our country, the same as it is with anyone else. And for the immigrant who comes here and has only been a citizen for a year, it's his or her country too. And if you're here, you're part of this country. It is our country. It belongs to everybody. Yes.
I think that it's our country in the sense that it's our legacy, and that our ancestors worked and built the wealth of this country, and we haven't been you know, the check hasn't been cashed.
Mhm.
We built it, our ancestors built it free,
Yes.
reparations.
Yeah. Well, the whole wealth of the West, not only the United States, but the whole wealth of the West is based on exploitation of others. But in all fairness, you know, as a people, we've all been exploiting each other in one way or another since the beginning of time. And we just have to come together as human beings and decide that it's time to stop exploiting each other and to help each other. Because nobody has a monopoly on genocide. Nobody has a monopoly on helping. We're all in this together. And at some point in history, somebody was doing something to somebody else. And this earth is finite. It's not infinite. This earth is finite. And there's no place else to go. And we're finding that out by the day. And we just have to come together as human beings and say, this is our home, and we have to learn to live together. Because there really is no alternative.
Mr. Williams, you
Yes.
said something earlier that struck a note with me,
Mm-hmm.
and that is we were sidetracked.
Mm-hmm.
In 1963, with integration,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of those sidetracks. We haven't been the same since. We were together pretty much. I know here, our schools.
Mm-hmm.
We just got the proper material to use. We had the teachers to teach it to us.
Right, exactly.
But once we went to other schools
Right.
and other places,
Mm-hmm.
then
We lost control of our children. We lost control of our children. Right.
So we have been sidetracked.
Yes.
And events like this and others you mentioned and others have mentioned
Sure. Mm-hmm.
will come back together. But it's going to take a while. Just reminding when Mary was talking, that it's talking with municipal back there, it's going to take some time to do it.
Yes.
We want to reinvent the wheel, we don't have to do that. We just need to replace it.
Right. We don't have to reinvent the wheel because it's all in our history. All we have to do is recognize it. This man in the White House now hasn't learned from his father. And how close can you get other than the family dinner table? Right? That's real intimacy. And we're still making the same mistakes. And we just don't. Yes. Yes.
Here at South and Appalachia, and I just want to say that all the holidays that we have for Martin Luther King Day, and I think that whether we're black, white, orange, or whatever nationality we are, we should all celebrate not only that, but enjoy the fact that we're off work and we're out of class.
I didn't hear that very last part. Could you please repeat that?
I said we all should enjoy the fact that we're off work and a lot of other kids are out of class.
Any other? Yes, sure.
I was at a meeting once, about 2 weeks ago, and there was a young man there with his father, and his father said, "There goes Red Blooded American." And the little boy looked up at his father and said, "Dad, when will I become a Red Blooded American?"
Mm-hmm.
And his father looked down at him and said, "You are." You know what he said? The little boy said, "Not in school."
Not in school. Well, children echo the thoughts and feelings of their parents. And so, you can't look at the children, you have to look at the parents, you have to look at the upbringing. And
That's a strong statement.
it's a strong statement. So, we're xenophobic. We're afraid of something that's different than us. And if it wouldn't, if it isn't a color, well, in fact, we're all the same color. We're just different saturation levels of the same color. It's all melanin. But if it wasn't that, it'd be something else. I mean, in Ireland, they're all white. What's the difference there? Catholic and Protestant. In Iran, they're all Persian, but it's Shiite versus Sunni. So, as human beings, we just, we will do our darndest to find these differences, to put somebody else down. I mean, it's human nature. I mean, the first crime was infracticide, Cain and Abel. There were only 2 people, 4 people on the earth then. So, you say, well, what hope is there for us if there were just 4 people on the earth and one murders another? What are you going to do with 200 billion people?
But those folk were taught law.
Excuse me?
They were taught how to live right, but they become to the point where they want to do what was right in their own eyes. And when you come away from the foundation, it's
Right.
not right.
Well, they left the foundation. But that's what I'm talking about. It seems to be human nature to leave the foundation. The foundation is all, God put the foundation there. I mean, the Garden of Eden. And what did Adam and Eve do with it? So, is there hope for us? So,
I think there's hope for us in that right here, we all here together, black and white,
Mhm.
have a common cause. And like you said, I think above all, we have to learn to live together because we have no place else to go.
that's right, there's no place else to go. And yeah, we're finding that out, and hopefully we will make that decision. Yes. Yes, sir.
I would like to make a comment on these holidays,
Mm-hmm.
like the 8th of August, 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
In West Tennessee, where I come from, we have white and black celebrating together.
Right.
Born, Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
8th of August,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Easter. We
Right.
all drink out the same bottle, so
Mhm.
many holidays.
Right.
All that all.
Right. Yeah, we do. When it comes down to it, we celebrate together. Yeah. But the important point is having respect for each other's celebrations and understanding why it's happening and being empathetic and enjoying it also. Yeah. Well, yes, sir.
Yeah, Doc, I just wanted to add, Brother Ripley mentioned earlier about being sidetracked,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, like our mother just said, if we as a people can realize the foundation on which this race was built,
Mm-hmm.
that eventually came into this emancipation that is being celebrated today, I think there is a dire need for us to go back to the old landmark. There is a portion in the book of Judges that says that there was another generation of the children of Israel
Mm-hmm.
that grew up and did not know the law.
Right. Exactly.
And the implication there is that the previous generation did not pass down the
Right.
tradition to
The
them.
traditions to them.
And so I think that when we will hold ourselves accountable, I came to this country and I'm working on a book, The Connection Between African Americans and West Africans,
Mhm.
where the bulk of our people came from. And I interviewed some elderly people, and some of the answers I got was, well, my question was, why has things gone this way?
Mhm.
And well, we called help, and we didn't want our children to go through the same thing
Mhm.
that we went through. But the truth of the matter is, these things are still here. The black male is still an endangered, creature right in this country, and I would say it fearlessly. So if even we say we want to shield our children, eventually they got to interact with the larger society out there. So we must as well, arm them, prepare them to live here. If we're going to live here,
Yeah.
we got to prepare them to live here
Mhm.
and deal with all the other stigmas in the society that they must, encounter.
Mhm. Well, when you talk about the black male being the endangered species, that's because the black male is deemed as a threat. Deemed as a threat. We've been demonized, we've been dehumanized, you know, that's the greatest. But any threat to quote unquote so-called order is always demonized, and there's always the organization to keep it in its place. That's why you have a secret police, and you know, every society has its secret police to keep threats in check, and that goes for anybody or anything. You know, all cultures have very strong foundations, and if every culture and every religion would abide by its foundations, there wouldn't be any problems. It's those who stray from the foundation.
The deviants.
Those are the deviants, and you have deviants in every religion, every culture, and every race. And yeah, they're just deviants everywhere. And it's up to those who stay with the fundamentals to balance that. And it's a constant battle. You know, even both intra and extra cultural race. You've got to. It's the old good versus evil battle. And that's what we're constantly fighting about. Constantly working. It's in the Bible, it's in Dante's Inferno, it's in Aristotle, it's in Plato, it's in, well, not Plato, but he was Alexander's, the Congress teacher. Anyway, any other questions? Well, I just want to again express my pleasure for allowing me to share this afternoon with you, and I thank you very much. And if you have any questions about any of the photographs there, you can go over and browse and look through them. I'll be glad to answer any additional questions you may have about them. Again, thank you so much.